After spraining my ankle, I took a cab to the hospital alone to have an abortion. When the nurse asked where my family was, I instinctively made up an excuse for him. I lay on the hospital bed all by myself, feeling life slip away from my womb. Later, I opened my phone and saw a post from one of Zach's close friends on Instagram. Life is so much more relaxed without Bella checking in all the time. Zach really cares about Diana. The photo showed Zach gazing tenderly at his childhood sweetheart, who was lying on a hospital bed. I liked the post, and it was quickly deleted. Not long after, Zach messaged me, carefully trying to explain himself. I simply smiled faintly and replied, "Have fun." Zach panicked and asked, "Bella, why aren't you checking up on me anymore?" Rushing home to celebrate our wedding anniversary, I fell down the stairs and twisted my ankle. I texted Zach, hoping he could pick me up from work. I waited eagerly for his arrival, planning to hand him the flowers I'd prepared. Instead, he coldly replied, "I have a drinking party tonight. Just grab something to eat yourself." If afraid I'd misunderstand, he added, "Don't worry, it's just old friends." No funny business. It felt like a bucket of cold water poured over me. I threw the flowers into the trash and took a cab to the hospital. When the doctor asked where my family was, I reflexively said, "He's in a meeting." Then I realized how ridiculous it sounded and corrected myself. "Sorry, he's deceased." The abortion went smoothly. I didn't feel much physical pain, just an emptiness in my heart. As if something had been hollowed out on the way home, I saw a familiar car heading toward the hospital, and my first instinct was to message Zach and ask what happened, but then I noticed a post on Instagram. Life is so much more relaxed without Bella checking in all the time. Zach really cares about Diana. The photo showed Zach gazing tenderly at Diana, his childhood sweetheart. They were part of a tight-knit group of friends, 4 guys and 1 girl. I and this little clique. Zach and Diana had always been seen as the golden couple. If Diana hadn't been tricked into marrying someone overseas, I wouldn't have had the chance to marry Zach. After Diana's divorce, she returned home with her son, and I became the wicked third wheel who ruined their perfect match. They never blamed Diana for abandoning Zach. Instead, they resented me for coming between them. Their group was wild, often drinking into the early hours. I'd worry about Zach's weak stomach and call to urge him to come home. Over time, they grew to hate me more, thinking I was a buzzkill. They even gave me the nickname Tiger Mom behind my back. At our home, they treated me like a servant, ordering me around. And today, Zach chose them over me again. Maybe that's for the best. At least now I won't feel guilty for letting go. I liked the Instagram post, and it was quickly deleted, probably because they forgot to block me. Zach stumbled home reeking of alcohol around 3 a.m. after lingering in the dining room for a bit. He cautiously pushed open the bedroom door, seeing that I was still awake. He looked momentarily flustered but gently tucked me and "Oh, hangover soup for me tonight." I murmured in acknowledgement. The stench of perfume clinging to him, even beneath the alcohol, made me nauseous. He sighed, seeming like he wanted to say something but held back. Finally, he muttered, "You're pregnant. Take care of yourself." The next day, I went to work early, and no matter how disappointing love gets, I can't let it affect my job. Because I'd been busy taking care of Zach before, I often arrived late to work. This time, my punctuality surprised my manager. After the morning meeting, she stopped me. "Bella, there's an opportunity to work at our overseas branch. Are you interested? I've always recognized your abilities, but I worry about your—" She trailed off, but I immediately nodded. "I'll cherish this opportunity." Huh. She hadn't expected me to agree so quickly and hesitantly asked, "I saw you throw away those flowers last night. Did you and your husband have a fight?" I smiled and shook my head. "A fight? No. Zach never fights with me. He only looks at me with indulgent eyes, as if I'm a spoiled child throwing a tantrum." And my phone buzzed twice. It was a call from Zach. His voice was still gentle, but carried a hint of dissatisfaction. "Are you busy today? Why didn't you make breakfast before leaving? Yesterday was our wedding anniversary. I got you a gift." Curious, I asked, "What gift?" "A small box in my coat pocket. It's a ring." He rummaged through his pockets, mumbling, "Weird. Where did it go?" Suddenly, he seemed to realize something and dryly explained, "Maybe I left it in the car." "I'll get you another one." I smiled bitterly. And that Instagram photo. Diana was wearing a ring. So, even my anniversary gift had to be tried on by his childhood sweetheart first. It's okay. I forgot to get you a gift too. Bella? Are you upset? I really did get you something that I replied softly. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. Busy with work. Since that day, my relationship with Zach had remained lukewarm and stagnant. A few days later, Zach's mom, in a rare gesture, invited me over for dinner. She had never approved of me and only ever acknowledged Diana as her ideal daughter-in-law. I hesitated, but eventually decided to accept out of respect for the elder. When I arrived by cab, Zach's mom was bustling around with his group of friends, setting the table. The moment they saw me, the room fell silent. Someone muttered under their breath, "Why did she even invite her? She's just going to stop Zach from drinking with us later." Ignoring them, I found a seat and sat down. Not long after Zach arrived with Diana, did I notice Diana was no longer wearing the ring. She slipped easily into the kitchen and started chatting with Zach's mom like she belonged there. Zach came over to me and proudly pulled out the ring, lying without even blinking. Turns out I left it in the car, completely oblivious to my emotions. He slid the ring onto my finger with enthusiasm. I stared at the ring, suddenly feeling disgusted. How many more lies like this had he told? Oh, Diana, you shouldn't be doing this. You're a guest. Let Bella handle these things. Die in the kitchen. Zach's mom was beaming at Diana, who clung to her arm playfully. Auntie, I just missed you. Well, if you miss me, why don't you visit more often? I think you don't care about me and Zach anymore. Zach's mom shot me a glance before pulling Diana over. By the way, Bella, I haven't formally introduced you. Diana is my goddaughter, now practically Zach's little sister. You don't need to worry about their relationship. Trust Zach's character, won't you? Her tone carried a hint of authority as she stood before me. Exactly, Bella. You're always checking up on him.
Killing the vibe.
Look at us perfectly decent people. It's not like Zach's out doing anything shady, and our company is just getting off the ground. Startups are like that, long hours and late nights are normal. Diana even ended up in the hospital from drinking with clients. Don't make such a fuss. If they wanted to be together, they would have done it long ago. Relax, Bella. The one backing her up was Evan, one of Zach's closest friends and the same person who had posted that Instagram story without blocking me. He had always disliked me and seized the chance to mock me now. Happily teaming up with Zach's mom, I frowned. What company? What startup? Zach had a stable corporate job. When had he suddenly started a company? Realizing he'd slipped up, Evan clamped his mouth shut. The others also fell silent. Dinner was tasteless. The earlier scene left everyone at the table awkwardly quiet. After the meal, it started raining unexpectedly. Zach cautiously approached me. Bella, it's not safe for Diana to go home alone. Stay here with Mom for a bit. I'll take her back and come get you after. I nodded. Zach looked at me, as if he wanted to say something more, but ultimately just squeezed my hand before leaving with Diana. Watching their retreating figures, I pulled out my phone and ordered a ride. Ignoring Zach's mom's attempts to make me stay, I went home alone. Rain poured down, soaking me. I must have looked miserable when Zach returned. He rushed over and wrapped me in his arms. I'm sorry.
Bella.
I've made you feel so wronged. But Diana has a child. She's divorced and struggling. Since I brought her back, I have to take care of her first. Why didn't you wait at Mom's house? By the end, his tone carried a hint of reproach. Does it have to be you who takes her home? I asked, sincerely curious. What? Evan and the others drove too, didn't they? Is it only you who can take Diana home? His confused gaze turned into irritation. He pressed his lips together. I cut him off. You wanted to take her. His shoulders slumped as he let out a sigh. Bella, are you jealous? I only see Diana as a sister. She's a single mom. Life is hard for her. I'm just trying to help out because of our childhood connection. Even quitting your job to start a business with her? I pushed him away, unwilling to linger in his fleeting warmth. Zach froze for a moment before explaining. You've got it wrong. The company was a group decision. We were just seizing a great opportunity. He adjusted his tie, growing impatient, but still fixed me with that same soulful gaze. Don't overthink it. You're going to be a mom soon. Don't let jealousy get the better of you. or we might end up with a little jealousy pot as our baby. But there was no baby anymore. Just as I was about to speak, Zach's phone rang. The moment he answered, a child's voice piped up. Daddy, when are you coming to see me? I miss you. Panic flashed across Zach's face. He covered the receiver and hurried into the bedroom to take the call. Moments later, he reappeared, changed into fresh clothes, and prepared to leave again. Sorry, Bella. Diana said the kid's sick and wants to see me.
I
I waved it off indifferently. I'm fine. Go ahead. Zach kissed my cheek before leaving. Once the startup stuff settles, I'll stop seeing her alone and focus on you and the baby. As soon as he left, messages from Evan and the others flooded in. Bella, something happened with Diana. Can you let Zach go to her? I ignored them and continued discussing my overseas transfer with my manager. Later, Diana updated her Instagram. The two most important men in my life. The photo showed Zach sleeping soundly beside her son. Zach's startup took off quickly, and soon they secured their first project. He invited me to attend the celebration dinner with him, repeatedly assuring me, from now on, I'll devote my time to you and the baby. If you ever see me doing something wrong, just tell me and I'll change. But as soon as we arrived at the restaurant, the server's smile froze on her face. She mumbled softly, "Why is it someone else this time?" The words weren't loud, but they were just enough for me to hear. I stopped in my tracks. Right then, my supervisor sent me a message saying there was an urgent matter that needed my attention at the office. Zach's expression darkened with displeasure. Can't you just push work aside for once for me? I shook my head. There had been so many times when I needed him. I'd call, only for him to hang up without a word, claiming he was busy working. When I brought him food to the office, one of his colleagues complimented my outfit and asked for my contact info to get the same one. He'd seen it and accused me of keeping tabs on him. He said I was suffocating him with my control and forbade me from disrupting his work again. Yet now, he wanted me to abandon my work for a celebration that had nothing to do with me. Zach paced around, visibly irritated. Bella, it's because you don't trust me with Diana that I brought you here. If you leave now, don't blame me for you getting jealous later. Di nodded. There was no point in jealousy anymore. After finalizing the details of my overseas assignment, my supervisor told me the transfer was set for next Sunday. She looked at me with concern. You've lost so much weight recently. Are you two still not talking? I didn't answer. Perhaps I was just waiting for the final verdict. A notification popped up on my phone, friend request. The profile picture belonged to the server from the restaurant earlier. After accepting, she sent me a video. Did I end the video? Diana held a wine glass between her teeth and fed it to Zach, surrounded by the rowdy cheers of his friends. The video ended, followed by a message. Disgusting homewreckers like you make me sick. I laughed bitterly, pulling up a photo of my marriage certificate and sending it to her. She replied with a stunned WTF before immediately blocking me. I forwarded the video to Zach and turned off my phone. There was a lot to sort out for the transfer. By the time I finished with work and turned my phone back on, I received a call from Zach's mom. Her tone was sharp, her words downright rude. Bella, where have you been? Zach got himself into trouble because of you. Confused, I asked, what happened? Her voice trembled with anger. What happened? What do you think? What did you send him? He suddenly started a fight, and Diana couldn't even hold him back. Now the police have taken him in for questioning. I'm out of town and can't return, so you better go see what's going on. I don't even know how you call yourself his wife. Did you get jealous again? She didn't give me a chance to respond and hung up, clearly livid. When I arrived at the station, Zach had already reached a settlement with the other party. His face was scratched, bloodied, and swollen. The moment he saw me, he rushed over. Bella, listen to me. It's not what you think. It was just a penalty game. Everyone was playing along, and that woman misunderstood, so she filmed it on purpose. Diana stood nearby, her face full of apologetic sorrow. But her eyes betrayed her smugness. I'm so sorry, Bella. We've known each other since we were kids, and this is just how we are. Please don't worry, there's nothing between me and Zach. Before I could respond, the server limped out of the station, glared at Diana, and spat in her direction. Shameless. Disgusting woman. Diana's face turned pale, and Zach glared at the server with clenched fists. His knuckles cracked audibly. Tears welled up in Diana's eyes, as if she had been gravely wronged. Bella, you have to believe me. Zach and I are innocent. I gave a small nod. You're innocent. All right, let's go home, I said, sensing something off about me. Zach instinctively stepped in to smooth things over. I opened the passenger door of his car. A child was sitting there. Upon seeing me, the child made a face at me and stuck out their tongue. Bad woman. Wicked tiger. The childish voice was filled with malice. Luca, how can you speak to her like that? Diana instinctively glanced at Zach. Seeing him just covering his face in silence, she added, he must have picked up these awful phrases somewhere. Bella, don't take it to heart. He just really likes Zach. Last time he had a fever. He wouldn't stop crying for Zach to come and stay with him. Zach is definitely going to make a great dad one day. I didn't react the way she expected, instead giving her a calm nod. You're right. Zach's expression darkened further, and he spoke slowly. Fine then, you can drive. I'll sit in the back with Luca and Diana. He was deliberately provoking me, hoping I'd get jealous. But watching the three of them standing together, I felt no anger at all. Zach was no longer the person who could affect my emotions with a single action. Luca, oblivious to the tension, seemed to think he'd helped his mom win Zach back. The smugness on his face mirrored Diana's perfectly. The three of them squeezed into the back seat, with Luca sitting in the middle. They looked like a picture-perfect family. Zach, however, sat in silence, frowning deeply, trying to lighten the mood. Diana broke the quiet. Bella, I've heard from Evan and the others that you get jealous easily, but it doesn't seem that way at all now. I drove in silence, giving her a perfunctory taking this as encouragement. Diana continued, Zach really is an amazing man. He's always been so kind to Luca and me. Luca's never had a father figure, and even though he doesn't say it, I know he's always longed for one. I was wondering if we could borrow Zach for a day next Sunday to take Luca to the family amusement park. With Luca around, I promised Zach and I wouldn't cross any boundaries. Did I stop the car and turn to her with a faint smile? That, of course, you don't need my approval for that. He's an adult and can make his own decisions, Bella. Zach's frown deepened. After escorting Diana and Luca upstairs, he came back, opened the driver's door, and gestured for me to move to the passenger seat. Instead, I got into the back. Why won't you sit up front? Are you mad? I shook my head. I'm just tired. With Diana and Luca gone, the car was engulfed in a suffocating silence. Zach couldn't hold back any longer. This will be the last time. After this, I'll set boundaries with Diana and Luca. Bella, please trust me one more time, okay? Under the hopeful look in his eyes, I nodded. He exhaled a sigh of relief, thinking he'd survived another crisis. But inside, I felt nothing but emptiness. IT didn't matter. By next Sunday, I'd be on a plane abroad. Out of guilt, Zach had been unusually attentive over the past week. He started waking up early to make me breakfast. Unfortunately, his cooking skills left much to be desired, and the food was inedible. I thanked him, took the lunchbox he'd packed for me, and tossed it in the trash on my way out. He began messaging me frequently, updating me on his whereabouts, what he was doing, and who he was with. It felt like we were back in the early days of dating. AT first, Zach used to share his schedule voluntarily. But over time, I grew accustomed to it, while he grew tired. The week passed quickly. On Sunday, Zach dressed impeccably. He tried to appear indifferent, but the tie he chose betrayed his effort to impress. IT was the tie I'd given him as my first gift, bought with 6 months of my salary. He once said he'd treasure it and save it for our golden anniversary, but now he was wearing it for an outing with another woman and her child. After he left, I quietly removed the ring he'd given me and placed it on the coffee table. Pinning it under the divorce papers I'd prepared long ago, I packed my suitcase and boarded my flight abroad. If Zach had been more attentive, he would have noticed me sorting my clothes recently. If he'd been more observant, he'd have realized my belly didn't show the signs of being 4 months pregnant. All his attention was elsewhere. He resented my so-called restrictions but willingly gave himself to others. If that's the case, it's better for us to part peacefully. The flight was long enough for me to dream through the end of our story. When I landed, my phone was flooded with missed calls and messages. Zach was frantic, repeatedly asking where I was and why I wasn't home. MY's supervisor messaged me as well. Have you seen the trending topics? Are you okay? Bella, if there's an issue, I can request for you to return to handle things before transferring to I open the trending list. One headline stood out. Perhaps this is what happiness looks like. The post was from a blogger documenting her life spending time with her son, husband, and mother-in-law. It was warm, simple, and seemingly mundane. Except the husband was Zach, and the mother-in-law was his mom. The blogger's tagline, after all this time, it's still you by my side, felt like a knife twisting in my chest. After all this time, I was just a passerby in this story of star-crossed lovers. Zach's call came through again. When I answered, his voice was thick with sorrow. Bella, it's not what you think. Please believe me. Diana just wanted to document her life. She didn't expect it to be shared by those accounts. Let's not let the internet ruin our lives, Bella. I don't want a divorce.
Can we talk?
Where are you? I miss you so much. I want to come find you, decide. Zach, you won't find me. What do you mean? My company has opened a new branch overseas. I've already applied to work here. The divorce papers are on the coffee table. Sign them, and let's not make this messier than it needs to be. That I won't sign. Zach's voice turned stubborn, desperate. You still love me, Bella. You're just angry, aren't you? I'll keep my distance from Diana. I won't do anything you dislike again. I've really learned my lesson. Can't we go back to how things were before? I shook my head, and oh, we can't. Please, Bella. His voice broke. For the baby, at least. A breeze brushed against my face, and I realized I was crying. But my voice remained firm. There's no baby anymore, Zach. The day slipped that ring onto Diana's finger. I had the abortion. Zach stayed silent for a long time before hanging up. Breathing in the fresh air of a foreign land, I felt like I was reborn. News of my departure and divorce with Zach quickly spread among our mutual friends. Those who sided with me called Zach a scumbag, while his group of friends remained unusually quiet. Only Evan kept showing off on Instagram, almost like he was taunting me, posting pictures of him and Zach drinking together, staying in the same hotel room. Below one of the photos, Diana had commented, "Feels like we're back to our childhood days." Even though the timestamp showed it was 3 a.m., I no longer called to urge Zach to go home, fearing a flare-up of his stomach issues. Instead, I turned off my phone and buried myself in work. Occasionally, Zach would send me messages, but I never replied. His tone shifted from certain to pleading. Bella, we can try for another baby. Please forgive me this once. It was only this one mistake. I promise I'll change. I can't live without you. I'm begging you. I couldn't tell if these messages were sent while he was drunk or sober, but it didn't matter anymore. Zach said he wanted freedom. Well, now I was giving it back to both of us. If everyone believed that Diana was a better match for him, then it was time for this villainous supporting character to exit the stage. Channeling my heartbreak into my work, I soon caught the attention of upper management. Within a month, I passed the review and officially joined the research group 3, the welcome party. I was coaxed into drinking by my colleagues until Sean, a fellow team member, stepped in to shield me. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his face was calm and composed. Being from the same country, Sean and I naturally gravitated toward each other, finding solace in familiar companionship amidst the foreign environment. I understood his feelings for me, but my failed marriage had left me disillusioned about love. As the party livened up, another phone call came through. I answered, met with prolonged silence on the other end. After a while, Zach's hoarse voice asked, "Why is there a man with you?" I chuckled lightly. "Does it matter to you?" "Of course it matters." How could it not? For the first time in all the years I'd known Zach, I heard him lose control like this. He yelled angrily, "We're not divorced yet. I haven't signed the papers. I don't want to lose you. Why don't you care about me anymore? Why don't you get jealous? Bella, please come back. I miss you. I miss you so much." "It's too late." I cut him off mid-sentence, my voice light but firm. "I don't love you anymore." The sound of muffled sobs came from the other end of the line, but I ignored it and hung up. I contacted a lawyer immediately. Walking away from this love that once consumed me, I felt startlingly clear-headed. Since amicable negotiation wasn't working, I decided to proceed with a lawsuit. No matter what. I wouldn't allow myself to be dragged into Zach's mess again. After the party, I hadn't touched a single drop of alcohol, but Sean was utterly drunk. My colleagues playfully teased me, urging me to take responsibility for getting him home. Some even shot me knowing glances full of gossip. Who was that on the phone earlier? Another admirer? If so, poor Sean's efforts tonight can't go to waste. I knew they were trying to matchmake me and Sean, but I decided to be honest. IT was my husband, I admitted. The sound of a glass shattering on the floor cut through the air. Turning back, I saw Sean's eyes clouded with an unreadable emotion. My words seemed to dampen the party mood. Perhaps I was born to ruin atmospheres like these. Helping Sean into the car, I noticed his gaze lingering on me, even in his drunken haze. When I leaned in to buckle his seatbelt, he suddenly pulled me into an embrace. I struggled briefly, only to hear the rapid pounding of his heartbeat. His voice was low and muffled as he asked, "Am I too late?" The night was quiet, with only the occasional sound of crickets in the distance. I answered, "Sean, do you want to hear my story?" As we drove, I spoke. Sean listened quietly, offering no interruptions. Sometimes I wondered if he had fallen asleep, but every time I paused, he would open his eyes, waiting for me to continue. By the time I dropped him off, I realized I'd poured my heart out as if he were a confessional. Embarrassed, I apologized, but Sean just patted my head gently. "Bella," he said, his face illuminated by the soft glow of moonlight, "true love isn't a crime. The crime is betraying the one who loves you. That I'll wait for you. Until the day you're ready to accept this love." I end the middle of the night. I was jolted awake by the shrill ring of my phone. As soon as I answered, I was greeted by the sound of Zach's mother crying. Annoyed at being disturbed, I asked impatiently, "What is it?" Uncharacteristically, her tone toward me was softened. In the past, she was always condescending, barking orders and criticizing me as though I were some vixen who had seduced her son. She even sided with Diana and made things difficult for me on purpose. But now, she stammered, "Bella, do you have time right now?" I responded coldly, "I'm abroad, and it's 3 in the morning." Did I sigh? "This is our family's fault, but could you help clarify something for Zach? Just say, you two are already divorced. Bella, I know this is unfair to you, but I have no other choice. Please, have pity on an old woman like me. Zach lost his father early, and if something happens to him, I won't survive." From her fragmented words, I managed to piece together the full story. Picking up my tablet, I scrolled through the news and saw the updates on the previous scandal. Someone had revealed Zach's married status, turning Diana from a celebrated romance influencer into a reviled homewrecker. The internet was viciously attacking both of them, with some even photoshopping funeral photos of the pair. People also started spreading rumors that Luca was Zach's illegitimate son. Did I end my contact list? Diana's profile picture had been replaced by a blank black image, and her Instagram posts had been wiped clean. I felt the wave of irritation. Why couldn't this mess leave me alone, even after I'd fled to another country? Losing patience entirely, I suppressed my anger and snapped, "Don't try to guilt-trip me. Your son is the one refusing to sign the divorce papers, not me. If you're really so worried about Zach, tell him to sign them immediately." "Bella, how can you say that? Zach is still your husband, and you not after the divorce." I slammed my phone down, turning it off, and tossed it onto the bed. A tidal wave of grievance washed over me. Why was I expected to give in again and again? The trouble they caused should be cleaned up by themselves. I refused to let them drag me back into that twisted circle. Perhaps unburdened by the weight of these events, I slept exceptionally well that night. To celebrate my official employment, the company gave me half a day off, and I didn't go to work until noon. Barely an hour into my day, a colleague approached, saying there was a homeless man outside asking for me. Puzzled, I headed to the door, with Sean following out of concern. As soon as I stepped outside, I saw a familiar figure. It was Zach. He looked markedly different than her, with sunken cheeks, dark circles under his eyes, and unkempt hair that suggested he hadn't taken care of himself in a long time. When he saw me, The dullness in his eyes flickered to life. But the sight of Sean beside me reignited his rage. He stormed over, trying to shove Sean aside. Get lost. Who gave you the right to stand near Bella? Unlike Zach's disheveled state, Sean, who lived a disciplined life, stood his ground without budging an inch. Frowning, I couldn't understand why Zach was making such a scene. He turned to me, his bloodshot eyes filled with desperation and defeat. Lowering his head, he pleaded, Bella, come back with me. Let's not get divorced, okay? I shook my head. Zach, it's over. Acting like this is unfair to both me and Diana. And oh, it's not over. Zach panicked and tried to grab my hand, but Sean stepped in, holding him back. With a gentle push, Sean sent Zach stumbling to the ground. A ring fell from his pocket and rolled several times before coming to a stop. It was the one I'd left on the coffee table. Zach's eyes turned even redder. He picked up the ring and cradled it as if it were a lifeline. He begged, Bella, please, give me one more chance. I shook my head again. Even if you won't sign the divorce papers, I can file for divorce through the courts. Dragging this out won't help anyone. For Diana and Luca's sake, sign the papers. That I turned and walked away. Zach tried to follow but was stopped by the security guards at the entrance. Behind me, his voice rang out in despair, calling my name over and over, but I would never turn back for him again later. I heard that Diana ran off with all their money. Unable to cope with the blow, Zach spiraled, spending his days drunk and utterly wrecked. Some of his childhood friends called me a few times to recount Zach's ruined life, but I simply listened in silence, feeling nothing. A few months later, I received the divorce papers, signed by Zach. Holding them in my hands, I felt the shackles that had bound me finally fall away. The past, with all its heartache, was now dead and buried. For the future, I had a new life waiting for me.